So, everyone knows the vampire thanks to guys like Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula, right? But what if I told you the scariest parts of the legend, the fangs, the fear of sunlight, the whole undead vibe, weren't magic but actually the symptoms of some seriously strange medical conditions? Welcome to Showertime Stories. All right, got your towel ready? Before you turn on the water and start singing horribly off-key, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's quick, easy, and I promise you won't get any soap in your eyes doing it. Now,
They are
let's dive
whispered in
in.
the dark, passed down from one generation to the next, clinging to the shadows of our imagination. Of all the monsters that haunt our folklore, none has proven more enduring, more seductive, or more terrifying than the vampire. We know the creature by instinct. The pale skin, the aversion to sunlight, the supernatural strength, the sharp fangs, and the unspeakable thirst for the blood of the living. It is the lord of the undead, a walking plague, a creature that turns neighbor against neighbor and transforms the sacred act of burial into a terrifying period of waiting. For centuries, in the villages of Eastern Europe, this was not just a story. It was a dire reality. People dug up the graves of their loved ones, finding them disturbingly well preserved, and drove stakes through their hearts to protect the living. But how could such a specific, horrifying belief arise? Was it pure fantasy, or was it an attempt to explain something real? A phenomenon they could see with their own eyes, but could not understand. To solve this mystery, we must first separate the monster from the man it was named after, a brutal prince of Wallachia. And then, we must look not into the darkness of folklore, but into the tragic light of science and the very real medical conditions that created monsters long before we gave them a name. The name we most associate with the vampire is Dracula. Thanks to Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, the name conjures images of a Transylvanian count in a cape. But the real Dracula was no count, and he wasn't from Transylvania. He was a 15th century prince of Wallachia, and his real name was Vlad III. His father was known as Vlad Dracula, meaning Vlad the Dragon, a title from his induction into the Order of the Dragon. Vlad III inherited the name, becoming Dracula, or son of the dragon. But it was his enemies who gave him the name that would define his legacy, Vlad the Impaler. Vlad's reign was one of shocking, almost surgical brutality. He fought to consolidate his power and defend his small kingdom from the encroaching Ottoman Empire. His preferred method of execution in psychological warfare was impalement. He was said to have created entire forests of impaled bodies. But here is the crucial distinction. For all his cruelty, for all his bloodlust, there is no contemporary historical account that ever accused Vlad the Impaler of drinking blood or rising from the dead. He was a man, a brutal warlord, not a supernatural creature. The link between him and the folklore of the vampire would only be made 4 centuries later by a novelist in search of an exotic, terrifying name. So if the historical Dracula wasn't a vampire, where did the legend come from? The answer lies in the terrifying symptoms of diseases that plagued the pre-scientific world. Imagine you live in a small, isolated village in the 1700s. A person you know begins to change. Their skin becomes pale and shrinks away from their lips and gums, making their teeth appear longer, more canine. They refuse to go out during the day, complaining that the sunlight is agonizingly painful. Their face becomes distorted, covered in sores and excess hair. At night they become aggressive, confused, even violent. You have no knowledge of genetics or blood disorders. You only have your folklore. What other conclusion could you draw, except that this person is becoming a monster? Today we recognize these as potential symptoms of a group of rare blood disorders known as porphyria. It's a genetic disease where the body fails to properly produce heme, a key component of hemoglobin. The buildup of chemicals called porphyrins can cause photosensitivity so extreme it leads to blisters and disfigurement upon exposure to sunlight. It can also cause reddish-brown teeth, facial hair growth, receding gums, and severe neurological symptoms like anxiety, paranoia, and hallucinations. It is, quite literally, a disease that can mimic vampirism. But porphyria is incredibly rare. For a more widespread explanation, we have to look at the diseases of the masses. Consider rabies, a viral infection almost always transmitted by the bite of an infected animal, a bat, a wolf. Once symptoms appear, rabies is nearly 100% fatal. It attacks the nervous system, creating a terrifying progression. The victim develops insomnia, wandering at night. They become hypersensitive to strong stimuli, bright lights, strong smells, even the sight of their own reflection in a mirror. One of its most famous symptoms is hydrophobia, a fear of water, caused by agonizing throat spasms that make swallowing impossible. And most chillingly, it can cause extreme aggression, hypersexuality, and a tendency to bite others, spreading the infection through saliva. A pale, nocturnal wanderer, repelled by mirrors, who becomes aggressive and tries to bite you. The parallels to the vampire myth are uncanny. An outbreak of rabies, spreading from person to person through bites, could easily be interpreted as a vampiric curse sweeping through a community. Other medical conditions contributed to the legend. Pellagra, a vitamin deficiency, can cause dermatitis, dementia, and a sensitivity to sunlight. Tuberculosis or consumption caused sufferers to become pale and emaciated, with bloody coughs that would stain their lips red, as if they had been secretly feeding. Finally, there is the state of the corpse itself. In a time before modern embalming, bodies would bloat from decompositional gases. This pressure could force blood up to the mouth, making it look like the corpse had recently fed. If a grave were exhumed during a plague, this sight, combined with the natural lengthening of nails and hair as the skin retracts, would be terrifying confirmation. The dead were not at rest. The vampire was never a single entity. It was a composite ghost, a name given to a host of horrors that had no names. It was the face of porphyria, the bite of rabies, the wasting of consumption. The legend wasn't born from a singular encounter with a monster like Vlad the Impaler, but from countless tragic encounters with terrifying and misunderstood medical conditions. The story of the vampire is a profound testament to the human need to create narratives to explain the unexplainable. When faced with a world of random, terrifying sickness, we did not see random biology. We saw a curse. We saw a monster. We saw a pattern in the chaos, and we gave that pattern a name. And in doing so, we created one of the most powerful and enduring myths the world has ever known.